There's nothing that can prepare you for giving birth to your first child. Definitely not 9 months in isolation. That doesn't prepare you at all. But there's nothing that could have prepared me for my labor beginning, that drive to the hospital, arriving at the hospital. What was really strange about my stay at the hospital was everyone was so excited. It was like a celebration was beginning to occur, which coincided with a lot of feelings I'd had that I had been made to feel I just needed to get to the end of my pregnancy. Redemption was in sight. Being allowed to return home was in sight. I would be allowed to be loved, accepted, and my old self again on the other side of delivery. So it was really complicated. You know, I'd also been placed in what felt like prison, which functioned like prison. And so it also meant the end of being in prison. I cannot tell you the toll that takes on a young person's mind. Being told that once you give birth and relinquish, you won't have to be in prison anymore. So I'm going into giving birth. My parents show up at the hospital. My mom's very happy and excited. My sisters are very excited to meet my son. I had a doula who I'd only met once before, so it was a very, I didn't really know her kind of relationship. Wow, the pain was not something I was at all prepared for. No one had talked to me about that, really. I just hadn't been talked to like I was a mother all throughout my pregnancy by anyone at all, except for the very loving midwife that I had had my appointments with. She had been pretty kind to me, although we had not had any extensive conversations because my social worker was typically in the room. Anyways, my labor pains began to get pretty painful, and I panicked pretty quickly and was like, I'm getting an epidural. I don't regret that. I was entirely unprepared for that pain. So my labor lasted for about 8 hours, and then he just suddenly was there. Everyone was supporting me. Everyone was holding my legs. Like, my family's acting so supportive. And suddenly he's there, and the world changed forever. There is no before, really, in most ways. I think what I remember the most is the smell in the room. God, he smelled so good, He smelled like mine. He smelled like peace, like perfection, like love, safety. They gave him to me almost immediately. I remember that my mom was over getting to look at him first, and I remember being annoyed about that. Like, you don't even want him. Why are you over there? God, so many of these thoughts and feelings, though, I had no idea how to put outside of my body. They were very trapped inside of me. Because how do you also act mad that your mom is excited to meet your son? Yeah, for me, there was also this feeling of maybe she'll fall in love with him. How could you not? Maybe she won't follow through with this plan that has always made me feel crazy, and I haven't been able to understand it at all, So everyone's in the room, everyone's wanting to hold him, everyone's taking pictures, everyone's so happy. I'm so relieved labor's over, but I'm just holding him. I'm in bliss. I'm in a bubble. I'm in euphoria. I am flooded with hormones. Everything is just numb, and it's just me and him, and I'm complete and I'm whole, and my nervous system is completely fine, and I'm fine. So in my 17-year-old brain, 3 days is like eternity, or at least I've decided that will be eternity. It's going to be eternity, and I don't have to worry yet because I have 3 days, I remember like this sense that there was like a sand timer, and that's like I could feel the sand pieces coming through, I could feel the end of my world and impending doom, and at the same time, I was just so in love and so happy to be holding him that I would push the feeling away. I remember being told I couldn't feed him. I didn't know I had the right to take a baby's mouth and feed him anyways with my own body. I didn't know that I had the right to say no to a room full of adults and professionals telling me that I was not allowed to do something. My sisters were there. They had not a clue how to help me. So I remember going to sleep that night, and I remember waking up the next morning, and again, just euphoria, joy, excitement to be with him. I remember they came in to do some tests, and they asked if they could take him to the nursery, and I said, no, I want every single test that can possibly be done in the room to be done in the room. And I remember that all of the staff was so incredibly kind to me. And I also really want to point out that the midwife who delivered my... She was so nice to me. She was... I hate the fact that I've never written her a letter or tried to find her. I'm so scared to. She was really good to me. I don't know what she was thinking. I have no idea if she was proud of me for placing or if she was confused about why I felt like I needed to. I don't know. I just remember that she was so nice to me. And I remember this one other nurse, I forget her name, but she was just so warm and friendly and kind. But no one once ever asked me if I needed help or if I felt supported or safe. So the next day, he's getting his tests done in my room and stuff, and then all of a sudden someone came in and said that they had to take him to go get pictures made. And, I was very upset about that. I was very angry about that. You know, I didn't really express that anger out loud very loudly. It was more just like my whole body was tense and seized up and upset because it represented having him taken. I could feel them taking him from me, and it made that timer in my brain just feel like it was all I could feel and see and be thinking about while he was out of the room, you know? And then the minute they brought him back to me, I made my peace with it. I was like, oh, I get to have these pictures for forever. These are going to be my pictures for forever, and no one else gets to have them. They're mine. And then I had him back in my arms. And then my now husband came to visit. I had not gotten to see him very many times at all during my pregnancy, and every time I had seen him had just been incredibly uncomfortable, very highly controlled. That's another story for another time. But he came to have a visit, and it was across the hospital, and I remember that my mom maybe wanted to come, or my parents asked to come, and I just remember specifically, I was like, I don't want anyone else there. I just want it to be me. I really, really, really hate looking back on how I knew how to hold certain boundaries, how I knew how to say what I wanted sometimes. Like, for instance, I decided that the adoptive parents could not be at the hospital. I don't know how I knew to hold my ground on that, and how I didn't know. Well, I do know, actually, looking back, I know the reason they were permissive with me about certain things is because they really wanted to see my adoption occur. For financial reasons. They wanted to make sure that it happened. So when it came down to the wire, if I was asking for something that made them feel, well, if we give her this, you know, she'll continue to be cooperative. So they weren't there, and I was able to spend that time alone with my now husband and his two parents. I did not know his parents very well. We'd only secretly dated for a brief amount of time. I'd spent some time at their house, but my mother-in-law has 10 children, so she was pretty preoccupied a lot of the time. She wasn't someone I'd gotten to know very well at all yet. So they're just kind of off standing in the background in my mind, watching but giving space. And I'm just sitting there. Every detail, everything is so cemented in my brain. So I'm sitting in the room with my son and his father. And as I keep pointing out, something that was just, it's the most cemented in my brain, I guess for good reason, is that was the way that he smelled, you know? I remember that I pointed that out to Nathan. That's my husband's name. I pointed it out, and I think I just was like, well, that's something we can agree upon. That's something we can talk about. Duh, our son smells amazing. He's amazing. Everything about him's amazing. So I just had a lot to say about my son to Nathan. But I can feel the energy of that room like it was yesterday. And I remember the feeling that was just coursing through my body so intensely was, isn't someone going to say something? This is the moment, you know, this moment where my parents aren't here. He's here now. We're holding him. We're looking at him. He's ours. You know, I've mentioned before that I felt like I was in and out of my body, on the inside of my body. Words are not needed to know that your child is your own. But on the outside of your body, in the world I experienced, I did need words. So there's this inner knowing, this feeling, this connection, this primal knowing your own child. But then in society, on the outside of your body, outside of what's primal and natural, there's a world telling you what you're allowed to know, what you're allowed to feel. And I was only 17. I'd not been given access to think outside of what my parents had told me I must know and believe to be truth. If you can't understand that, then you can't understand that. But I just remember the tension was just like you could cut it with a knife. I was just so angry. I was just like, why is no one saying something? This is the moment. I thought it would all come undone. I thought it would somehow all unravel. I thought it would just somehow all spill out. This is the moment. You're here. We're all in this room. No one's preventing you from talking to me. No one's preventing you from begging, from pleading, from offering me information, from telling me what our life could look like if we kept him, from getting me away from my parents. They're over there. They can't hear you. Say something. Do something. I didn't say any of that out loud. I did not know how. That is a product of being isolated and locked away and being made to feel that you don't know how to communicate for yourself, and being met with professionals for months invalidating everything that you ask. When you asked for information, it wasn't given to you. So it just left me with this, nothing I want is going to come about. I don't know how else to put it. So someone pointed out that their time was up. The allotted amount of time they were supposed to have was up. And I remember saying, I don't care. I don't care. We need longer. No, he can hold him longer. I think I also had good reason to think he may not want me in the room, because he didn't understand what was going on with me, really, and we hadn't been able to talk. But he let me stay in the room, and I thought just my presence, he would know, like, I want to be here. I want to be here with you. Look at me. I'm watching you hold him. I haven't taken my eyes off of you. It's not because I'm trying to make sure you don't harm him. It's because I want to watch you holding him. I didn't say any of that out loud. I don't remember that part coming to an end. I just couldn't believe things kept coming to an end. Later on that day, they took him for an ear test. I think I had fallen asleep. I don't think I'd been sleeping very much. I think I'd briefly fallen asleep. And they took him to get his ears checked without my permission. I didn't want them taking him for anything. I think I remember they asked me and told me he has to go to the nursery for this test. They can't do it here. So after a little bit of time had passed, I don't know, maybe it was 15 minutes, maybe 20, maybe 30, I got so panicky. I was like, why haven't they brought him back to me? What's wrong? What's going on? And I just knew it in my gut. I knew it. They had just left him in the nursery. They weren't trying to get him back to me. And I just got incredibly panicky. And I got up out of my bed and just started walking down the hall. And I don't know, everyone started following me like, what are you doing? Where are you going? You can't just be wandering around. And I'm just like, stop me. And I'm just sobbing, walking through the hallways. Where's my baby? Someone take him to me to him. Someone get me to him. Where is he? And someone saw me and they could see my panic, and they got me straight over to the nursery, showed him to me, and then let me wheel his crib back to my room. They didn't do anything like that to me again while I was there. This is the hard part I really don't want to talk about. So the next morning, I woke up and I knew it was my last day. I can't honor what it felt like to wake up that day with words. All day long, I knew they were coming. I knew they were coming. With the papers. I remember seeing them arrive and walking into my room. The social worker and the woman who would be keeping him from mandatory foster care for 10 days, who I had demanded to meet in advance. It was another one of those things that I was like, this is happening. I get my way. They said I'd been the only mother to ever insist or even request to meet the foster care mother in advance. She was someone else who was incredibly kind to me, and yet again, someone who never asked me if I was okay, if I needed help, but I try to remember some of the things that happened, and even just the smallest positive way, she was kind to me. So they're all sitting there in this room. My mother, the social worker, and the foster care mother, they're all sitting around me in my bed while I'm holding my son. And I just remember I was sobbing so hard, I was trembling so hard. And I just said to them, how am I supposed to sign this? When I'm shaking so hard, I can't read it. And my eyes are so full of tears, I can't see it. Oh my God, and I was just so angry. How are you sitting here watching this happening to me? You cruel people, you cruel people. If you ever see this, you cruel people that did that to me. I wanted support so badly. I wanted help so badly. And all I could figure out how to say to you was, I can't even see the paper. How can you ask me to sign this? But I did it. Because I didn't realize that I had a choice. I didn't understand that I could say no. I didn't know what to do. And then they gave me a little bit of time to keep holding him. I was never gonna leave. Eventually they told me I had to leave the hospital. They let me hold him while they wheeled me out of the hospital. I don't remember the moment that the foster mother took him out of my arms. But I remember watching her shut the door after she'd placed him in her big black Suburban. And I remember her driving away and the red lights on the back of her car. And then I remember screaming and falling to the ground in agony. I read something in the book that a mother testimonied and expressed that she screamed loudly, and all she can think is that she was trying to imprint on her son that he would at least hear her anguish at being separated from him, and that somehow maybe that would remind him forever that it hadn't been wanted and that he was loved. And when I read that, oh my God, I know that's what I was doing, you know? It's really painful to hear someone else share the same. So that I was picked up and placed in the car to go back to the home that I was staying in with my parents at that point. And I was made to feel, I don't remember who, by my father or my mother, that I needed to control myself and not force everyone in the car to endure my agony and my tears. And I think part of me did not want them to be a part of what they were putting me through. I wanted to be alone. Somehow I held myself somehow together on the ride home. And the moment we got back to the house, I ran inside, I shut myself in the bathroom, and I sobbed until there was nothing left inside of me. And then I went to bed and just held his picture, the pictures they'd taken of him at the hospital, for days, until I was allowed the first foster care visit. And I'll leave it there for now.